Yes.
Good evening. Happy Shark Week. And welcome to the Indian River Rescue. My name is Alex Bologna. I'm the president of the Space Coast Young Republicans. I think this is an issue that all of us find very near and dear to all of us. So this is, if you've been watching the headlines, this is a topic that I think all of us can get behind. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about what's going to be happening tonight. We're going to let our speakers introduce themselves and have opening remarks, and then we're going to open it up for a Q&A session. Now, how that's going to work is if you have a question, we have index cards. We hand it to you at the front. If you would like more index cards, please raise your hands, and one of our club members will come by and hand them to you. And please write it down and hold it up. And if it's directed at somebody in particular, please write their name at the top of the index card. Once you want to hand in your question, bring it to one of our club officers, and we'll announce it up here to our panelists. So if anybody would like to help us do more events like this is something that we really are passionate about, please visit Dave, our club treasurer in the back, and we'd love to have your support, so thank you. Okay, well, let's open it up. From the left, do you guys have your mics on? The mic in the middle, starting at the left.
Am I the left?
Yeah.
Does the green light mean it's on? It's on.
If you could just introduce yourselves, maybe you have any remarks about your lagoon or your work.
Well, is this the 5-minute remarks, or is this just introductions and then?
This would be your remarks at the 5 minutes and the introduction.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Virginia Barker. I'm the Natural Resources Director for Brevard County. And within the Natural Resources Office is the Save Our Indian River Lagoon program. That's the half-cent sales tax that the voters approved in 2016. The dollars are collected countywide and go into a trust fund that the county oversees. So far, we've collected nearly just over $59 million. We're ahead of the revenue projections. We're now in our second year. So the first year was very busy trying to set up a good governance structure for managing those funds wisely and being transparent with how they were spent. We've also been working to build capacity through partnerships. Nearly half of the projects that are going on this fiscal year are being done by either cities or nonprofit partners like the Marine Resources Council. And so those partnerships are really important, and coming up with the contract arrangements to ensure that that work is being done as intended and at the cost that was fully justified. The plan is really based around a simple concept that we need to reduce the incoming load of pollution. We need to remove the built-up accumulation of pollution that's built up in the lagoon over the last 5 or 6 decades. We need to restore a lot of the natural resilience in the system, the natural filtration systems. We see a lot of, mostly we're doing that through oyster programs, but there are living shorelines, there are other ways to restore that filtration. And then we need to respond to new information, because after all, we are the Space Coast, and we invent things here, we come up with new technology, and so as we come up with better ways to clean up the lagoon, we need to be able to update that plan and replace older style projects with newer style projects. We've done annual updates to the plan, 2 already, and we're just getting started on our 3rd. Those updates are vetted by a citizens oversight committee. I saw one oversight committee member in the room. Where'd she go? There she is, Courtney Barker. Most of that committee is made up of citizens like you from different walks of life. We wanted a good diversity on that committee, and the League of Cities nominated half of the members. The County Commission nominated the other half and confirmed all 14 members. And so they review all proposed changes to the plan, they review all the expenditures, all the projects and make a recommendation to the county commission, and then the county commission adopts those updates. And as part of the respond piece, responding to new information, we need to document the success and the performance of projects as we go along. And so one of the things we've done is we've installed 54 groundwater monitoring wells to try to get a better idea. You read in the newspaper, some people say it's all septic, some people say, yeah, but there are these horrible sewer overflows, then there's leaky sewer pipes, there's stormwater, there are all these different sources of pollution, which one is the biggest problem? So we're trying to actually measure those things so that we can answer that question better and fine-tune the plan with that information. We're trying to be transparent, so the Oversight Committee meets monthly. Their meetings are televised. The agendas are posted on the website ahead of time. The meetings are recorded and also posted online. Their agenda packets are there, so there's lots of information on the website. We've also got social media, so for those people who do social media, which is not me, it's out there. And then in summary, we have 8 projects completed to date. We have 3 that are under construction right now, and we have 24 that are in design and permitting stages. So lots going on out there, and I look forward to answering more questions this evening.
My name is John Zavaya. I'm the County Commissioner from District 3, which is the southern part of Brevard County. Ms. Barker has done an absolute fabulous job with transparency. While I may not agree with all of the plans, and while I may have voted against, I think that it's been a wonderful process in which people can get involved and make their voices heard. Many of the things that have brought forth have been very worthy, and there is a long list that I think down the road we can agree on that will help heal the lagoon. The issue is right now, while they're monitoring wells, I live on the lagoon, and I look out, as many of you guys do, and while science is very important, looking out and smelling is all the science that I need at this point. And it disgusts me. Thankfully, we have an advocate, Representative Randy Fine, who I think is 24 hours a day running around with a cell phone videotaping all of the spills that are going into the tributaries. But I'm here to answer for the actions of the County Commission. Virginia does a very good job for the administrative perspective, but I'm one of the guys and gals that vote for it. So I'm here to answer any questions that you guys may have on Brevard County's partnership with the state to help heal the lagoon. I look forward to tough questions because, quite frankly, we've made some tough or bad decisions depending on how you perceive. So thank you guys for showing up. No matter where we are on this issue, I think it's wonderful that we all come together to discuss such an important and vital resource here in Brevard County.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Lisa Soto. I'm the Executive Director of the Marine Resources Council. I'm really happy to have been invited to participate and be a member of this panel tonight, so thank you for that. And I appreciate you all coming out to hear about something that's near and dear to my heart and to the organization that I've been working with since 2013. My background, I'm an urban ecologist. I have a PhD, so I'm a real scientist. And I spend a lot of time looking at numbers and collecting data and trying to interpret that. I'm an ecologist, so trying to interpret that into the bigger landscape, which is very, very challenging. I worked with UCF as an urban ecologist for about 11 years, but I came back to Brevard in 2013, where I've lived since the early 90s, because the lagoon needed my help. I felt like I could contribute something. There was an opportunity to work with an organization, the Marine Resources Council, a nonprofit that's been dedicated to this lagoon for over 30 years, that I had something I can lend to this community to try to bring our estuary back to something productive, something we feel good about having our kids swim in again, and that I had some skills that I could contribute And one of those, is the science part, but another part is bringing the community together. It's really super important, and I feel like, unfortunately, when horrible events happen, sometimes people's walls fall down, and they join hands and they try to work cooperatively to solve things. And I think with the fish kill that happened in 2016, a lot of people realized we all have a lot to lose with this estuary's demise, and people started really gathering together and joining hands and raising funds and changing policy and passing the sales tax and so on to generate the revenues that we need to get this done. So, how do we go about doing that? We don't want to just be emotional and say, oh, it stinks, let's work here. Oh, it stinks there, let's work there. We want to use the data, we want to use the science and figure out where is the smell coming from. Is it a naturally occurring odor? People, have you smelled the smells here for 30 years? They have existed here for 30 years. Methane gas smells like methane gas, whether it's coming from decomposing seagrass or decomposing human waste. So you have to know where it's coming from to know where you want to put your money. It's the responsible thing to do. The responsible thing to do when you buy a new car is to research the car, right? I mean, you're all scientists also. If you're going to invest in something, if you're going to spend big money, you want to do your research to figure out what you're investing in. So that's what we want to do here. We want to do the research, whatever kind of research that is, whether it's chemistry or it's social research or it's groundwater research or whatever it is. We want the data to make the right decisions. We want the data to see if it's working. If we're going to invest $34 million or more a year in certain types of projects, don't we want to know if we're doing the right thing? Don't we want to see, is it working? Oh, it's working, great. Speaking of that, we're about to release Marine Resources Council, as I said, is a charitable organization. We depend on your contributions to keep us alive. We're about to release a report card. We've been assessing the health of the Indian River Lagoon for the past 3 years. We've collected 20 years of data, so we now see how the lagoon has changed over the past 20 years. We're about to release it this week, so it's really exciting. By the end of July, you're going to, on our website, savetheirl.org, savetheirl.org, information is back on the table. You can go and see how nutrient concentrations have changed in the lagoon, turbidity, algae, the water quality has changed in the lagoon over the past 20 years, where and how, and that's the kind of data that answers the questions, what's happening, where, and why. So when you start putting everything into maps and you start looking at how changes over time are happening, then you start to answer the tough questions. Why is the water quality so bad between the Melbourne Causeway and the Sebastian River? Why? So we can start investigating, we can figure these things out. So it does take science, and it does take understanding and evidence, and I'm here to maintain that it's the responsible way to proceed with decision making, and I'm glad to answer questions that you may have. Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is Scott Herbert. I have to put just one little quick disclaimer out there. Although I work for an academic institution, I am not representing them today, okay? So, just so you know. But that does not exclude the fact that I am a scientist and I am an academic, and tell you a little bit about my background. I have master's degrees in both coastal zone management and marine biology. I'm finishing my PhD in epidemiology, which means I understand the human health side of this as well as the environmental side of this. I've also worked in academics for 15 years, and I own my own environmental firm for the last 15 years, so I understand the industry side of this. I have a pretty good understanding about how the whole process works and everybody's input and everything that everybody needs. This is one thing I want to say. I was a little hesitant coming today, and I know what you think, but that's not the reason. The reason is this. I've done a lot of talks, and I've done panels before and everything like that, and all we do is talk and talk. I'm tired of talking. I really am. We need to start doing. But here's the thing too. We all have to do. We can't just wait on our government to do it for us. I give this talk every year at my college, and I do presentations on this. It's on research, on student research. But one of the aspects of the student research project I do is called Big Picture, Small Project, okay? But if in research, you do little projects to handle the big picture. It's the same thing with us. If all of us do just one little part, every little part builds together to handle the big part. That's it. And I'm hoping, one of the things I'm hoping is when we leave today, that you have the knowledge base and the encouragement just to do one little thing. And I have ideas and concepts that I'd love to share with you guys. It's minor stuff, but the minor stuff makes the bigger difference. So I'm looking forward to talking to you all today, and let's see what we can come up with.
Thank you. I'm State Representative Randy Fine. I represent District 53, which is effectively everything in Brevard County south of that Melbourne Causeway, all the way down to the Indian River County line. And I want to sort of, I guess, be blunt, which I'm somewhat known for doing at this point. And look, the Indian River Lagoon is a huge political issue now. I mean, this is election season. And as I go out and talk to voters, this is the #1 thing they want to talk about. Why is that? Well, I think Commissioner Tobias summarized it well. You don't have to be an expert to know that things are bad. In fact, we have a little saying in my house when we hire someone to come and do something and they don't do it, and then they say that they tried. Let's say the air conditioner broke. Well, I tried to fix your air conditioner. Please give me the $200. I look at them and I say, I can have a broken air conditioner for free. And so the reason that people are so aggravated right now is because they agreed to tax themselves a half a cent, frankly on some false pretenses that there were matching funds available, which there never were. And now they look out the door, they drive across the river, they look in the water, and it looks like they're living on a cesspool. And that is why people are angry. And I see you all knocking. So look, what we know is that things aren't getting better. In fact, to some degree, it appears that they are getting worse. Now, it'll be interesting to see what's in this report, but that's how people feel. Here are some of the issues. We don't have enough money. And one of the things that frustrates me the most about some of the politicians is when they tried to get us to do the half-cent sales tax, they said it's not enough money. We need money from the state, we need money from the federal government. Well, we haven't gotten that money, and we can talk about why during this presentation. But yet, when there's a discussion about spending more money, everything reverts back to this half-cent sales tax. Fixing the Indian River Lagoon is going to be a multi-billion-dollar problem, multi-billion-dollar fix, and I'll explain why. Somebody didn't like what I had to say.
It's a multi-billion-dollar problem, and this Indian River sales tax is going to raise maybe a half a billion
at most. So there's not enough money, and what we're spending that money on, while it's a good idea, it's the equivalent of, how do I say this? It's the equivalent of scooping the stuff out of the toilet while you're allowing more to go into it. We aren't addressing the core issue. The core problem that we have, and you don't have to be a scientist to figure this out, is we have tens of thousands of septic tanks that leak into the lagoon. Because by the way, something that people don't know, I learned this, I talked about this with Ms. Barker a while ago, a fully functioning septic tank that is working puts nutrients into the lagoon. What's killing the lagoon is not fecal matter, it's nitrogen and phosphorus, which regular septic tanks don't take out. And we have tens of thousands of them that are sitting on the lagoon. The other problem we have, and I'll talk about this issue, is that every time it seems to rain, Commissioner Tobias talked about me running around with my cell phone, every time it seems to rain, the politicians allow raw sewage to go into the lagoon. And I've talked about this ad infinitum since the hurricane. You all remember when we had Irma. Irma lasted what, 3 days, 4 days? Well, if you sit on the Brevard County Commission, it lasted for 35 days. Because for 35 days, the county released 22 million gallons of raw sewage into the Indian River Lagoon. That's a hard number to wrap your head around. 22 million gallons, what's that mean? I mean, you can know what a gallon of milk is. What's 22 million of those? It's the equivalent of 2,000 swimming pools full of raw sewage being dumped. It takes a lot of flushes of the toilet to do that. That's what we did. So I've tried to attack this in multiple ways. One is the way that my first session in the legislature, I introduced a bill that would have attacked septic tanks. It would have said, every time you sell your house, you got to get your septic tank inspected. Seems reasonable, right? You inspect everything above the ground. Why not inspect everything below the ground? It's a particularly good idea because many people who move to Florida, and 1,000 people do every week, have never had a septic tank. So they don't even know to get it inspected. And I got a lot of pushback from people. And one of the reasons I got pushback on this idea was regular people said to me, why should I have to change my septic tank when every time it rains, raw sewage goes into the Indian River Lagoon? So I revisited that this last session, and I recognize I'm a business guy. And what I know is the way you eat an elephant is one bite at a time. And knowing that we don't have enough money in order to fix the Indian River Lagoon, how can we come up with more money? Well, one way is we can try to get state and federal funds, and I will do that. But we haven't made that very easy. If we'd been smart, we would have said, hey, state, we vote to tax ourselves. The tax goes into effect the minute you put up your half. Instead, your mom probably said, you don't have to buy the cow if you can get the milk for free. That's basically what we did. But nonetheless, I can go up there and I can try to do that, but we also have to be looking for ways internally to tell that story. And one way that we can do that is the #1 tourism asset in our county, according to the people who push the half-cent sales tax, is the Indian River Lagoon, worth about a couple $2 billion a year, about $1 billion if we clean it up. And I said, well, we've got 15 million coming in every year, and we think it's a good idea to spend money on AstroTurf, for museums, for lighthouse employees. I think cleaning up the Indian River Lagoon is a better idea. And so we got a bill passed that would allow up to $75 million to be spent over the next 5 years on Indian River Lagoon cleanup, in addition to the $40 million that's being spent every year, because it's going to take lots of money and lots of time. But what I want to get everybody focused on is this. We can do, if we want to get the confidence of everybody, of voters, we've got to get the sewage issue fixed. Because it's such a horrible optic to ask people to make changes in their own lives. We can't ask, when I ran my companies, I never asked the people who worked for me to do something different than I was willing to do myself. And so we can't say, it's okay to put sewage in the lagoon when it rains, but you better not put a septic tank in your backyard. That doesn't work with folks. So I'm looking forward to answering your questions, and we really appreciate the Young Republicans organizing this and everybody being here.
Thank you, panelists. What's this?
I'm actually glad you brought up the septic tank issue. There's something that you may not realize, and see, I've lived beachside for about 20 years now. I lived in Melbourne Beach for about 13 years, and now I'm up in Satellite. When I bought my house, I was told back in the 1960s that all septic systems were pulled out, and we were all on sewage. Nope. Half the house was on septic, which I did not know until it started backing up in the house, and the other half was actually on sewage. So there's a lot of buried septic tanks that are partially active right now that nobody even knows, because the records are saying that they're not there when they are. So just a little heads up on that.
You'll need to tell that story if I introduce that bill again.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, panelists, thank you very much. All right, so first question of the night. What is being done right now to deal with the current algae effects as far as cleanup and wildlife rescue? This is a general question to the entire panel, so if anybody would like to.
I guess I've been elected. So the biggest algae concerns right now are actually in the southern end of the lagoon, coming out of Lake Okeechobee, through St. Lucie, down the St. Lucie River, and fortunately for us, that algae bloom does not make its way here. That water doesn't make its way here. That's a freshwater algae, produces the microcystis toxin, and so once it hits the lagoon, the salinity in the lagoon kills it, which is why it's toxic there, and so it doesn't work its way up the lagoon to us. We have brown tide. It's been blooming since 2012, 2013, and that brown tide, while it has been toxic in other parts of the world, ours has not been, fortunately. It particularly likes high salinities, and it likes high phosphorus, and it likes ammonia. And so the releases from septic tanks, the releases from sewer overflows, from leaky sewers, those are very high in ammonia, and so they're the exact kinds of things that feed, that give this brown tide a competitive advantage. One of the things that we've seen in the last week and a half, now that the summer rainy season is here, is the salinities have been dropping in the lagoon, and when you drove across the causeways this evening, the water was actually bluish instead of just brown coffee looking. And so chlorophyll levels in the Banana River have cut in half just in the last 10 days or so, and chlorophyll levels, bloom levels in the Indian River from Titusville all the way down to Sebastian Inlet are actually below the threshold that the Water Management District designates as a bloom. So I think the question was, what are we doing about it? We were very concerned that we could have a fish kill, and so we organized ways to have a cleanup event and actually employ out-of-work fishermen to help clean up dead fish if we had another fish kill. We're grateful that that has not happened. But the main thing that we're doing is trying to implement these septic and sewer and muck dredging projects and restoration projects as quickly as possible to get those nutrients out of the system that are feeding the bloom.
Okay, thank you.
Can I keep going?
Oh, sure.
I don't know how big your stack of cards
No,
is.
please, continue.
So, some of the comments in the panel, the little things add up. So I wanted to give an example of how little things add up, and some of the little things aren't so little, but there's been concern about the order of things, and I understand the optics of you need to clean up what's going in before you try to clean up what's already there. So I want to give one example down in Palm Bay. One of the first projects underway was the Turkey Creek dredging project. So, why do you bother cleaning up that muck when you still have stuff coming down? And so there are a lot of projects underway. Some have been implemented in that watershed. So just working your way upstream, up Turkey Creek from where that dredging project took place. There's a living shoreline project. If you drive by the bay there, you'll see the booms, you'll see the fresh sand. The city has been restoring that shoreline, and now that they've restored the post-hurricane shoreline, they have funding from the half-cent sales tax to put in a living shoreline to help filter that water at the bottom of at the mouth of the creek. Just upstream from there, across the railroad tracks, the city of Palm Bay has constructed a stormwater pond that captures stormwater that's headed towards the bay and treats it before it runs under US 1 and discharges into the lagoon. Further upstream, there is the wastewater treatment plant that treats the wastewater, it treats the bacteria and the viruses, the pathogens that are in that waste, and then it redistributes that water for irrigation. That irrigation water still has lots of nutrients in it that are running off people's yards, running down people's driveways, running down the streets, getting into the stormwater, and working its way to the creek. So the plan is funding an upgrade of that wastewater treatment plant to clean up, to take the nutrients out of that reclaimed water before it goes to people's homes. There are also multiple septic to sewer projects in Palm Bay, in the watershed around the Melbourne-Tillman Water Control District to stop those nutrients from getting into the water. We've worked with Melbourne-Tillman Water Control District and the Water Management District to purchase a harvester. And what used to happen is the nutrients from people's septic systems and leaky sewer pipes and fertilizer, all of that was getting into the canal system and feeding blooms in the canal system and feeding macroalgae and hydrilla growing in the canal system. And that hydrilla and the water hyacinths, they would grow so thick that when we had storm events, they would slow down the flow of water and contribute to flooding. So in order to try to save people from flooding concerns, the Melbourne-Tillman Water Control District would pour chemicals into the canal system to kill the plants. Well, that helped flooding, but it released all the nutrients from those dead plants into the creek, into the lagoon. So we worked with them and the Water Management District to buy a harvester to actually harvest the plants out of the canal system and remove all of those nutrients instead. They did that for the first time last year, and they haven't seen those weeds come back again this year like they have year after year after year, because the nutrients were actually removed. We also partnered with the Water Management District and DEP on installing pumps at the western end of the Melbourne-Tillman Canal system that pump water west to the St. Johns River, where that water used to flow before we ditched and diked and re-diverted water to the Indian River Lagoon. And as of 2018, those pumps have been running pretty much non-stop all year, and they are moving 60% of the water that reaches Melbourne-Tillman back west to the St. Johns River. So when you look at all those things collectively, they add up to cleaner water coming down Turkey Creek. The muck shouldn't reaccumulate there at the bottom of the creek. Turkey Creek is the largest, before these projects, was the largest source of, the largest tributary of water and nutrients to the Indian River Lagoon in Brevard County. And so, when you can reduce the impacts from all those different sources, they add up to a very large difference for the lagoon. And I think we're going to begin to see much cleaner water from 192, from Melbourne south to Sebastian Inlet, as a result of the cumulative impact of all of those projects. And then that's what we've got to do in the Banana River and in the northern Indian River Lagoon.
I'd like to build off on what she said. Now, here's where science and business can work together. Some of the work I'm doing with my students right now is to take a look at nutrient uptake on these plants and algae. The thing is that when they die, they fall back in the system and then just put it back in. But with the harvesting aspect, one of the biggest pushes right now is organic growing, is it not? If you take these plants and algae that naturally suck up phosphates and nitrogen and all that, remove them, dehydrate them, and sell them to farmers up north to put it on their property, they can use that as organic fertilizer. It's untreated. That would be one way for us to solve removal of nutrients from our lagoon and be financially sustainable. It's just a thought.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to combine the next question into two. The question is, why not open a cut north of the Haulover Canal? And then I'm going to combine this with, why is there reluctance to open the Canaveral locks?
I guess I'll take a stab at this one. I am also adjunct faculty at Florida Tech, and I know that Florida Tech has been modeling this concept, and they continue to model it. And I think the hesitancy is that it's the tens of millions of dollars that it's going to take to do this type of a project and manage it for the long term. And without the confidence that it's going to do the instated objectives. So what do we want to accomplish by doing that? Do we think we're going to get the water all clear and that everything's just going to flush out and dilute in the Atlantic Ocean and disappear into the horizon? What's going to really happen? Is it going to suck a bunch of muck out and deposit it on our beaches? Maybe. Is it going to cut the sand flow off that goes from north to south, and then we have a dredging project that goes on forever? The inlets and where to place the inlets is a question. How much of a juice you're going to get from squeezing that orange is really the tough answer. Is it worth the investment to do it just to find out, oh, we didn't get what we wanted out of that $50 million project? So, they are working on it at Florida Tech. They're doing the feasibility work that needs to be done to see if it's worth the investment. The easy answer is, open an inlet and flush everything out. It's a lot harder to stop and reduce the pollutants from going in the first place. You think you can just flush it all away. I don't think that's going to happen. And that up here in the north end, we've got some real flow issues internally. We've got a giant island right in the middle of two narrow parts of the lagoon, Merritt Island. We've got all these causeways that are cutting north-south flow. We've got a lot of other obstacles that are blocking flow and I also know that FDOT and the port are working to try to change those causeways. The 528 causeway I know is under consideration for turning it, trying to get rid of some of those causeways and putting bridges back that would allow more flow. So, there's a lot of other ways we can potentially work with our partners at the state and and FDOT in particular and the port to try to increase flow dynamics in the lagoon, besides opening up a causeway. Opening up an inlet. But the inlet idea is not completely off the table. Know that FIT professors continue to do the modeling. Dr. Gary Zarillo is one in particular. I'll be at the IRLRI meeting on Monday. I think Gary is going to present his latest results. So it's still under consideration. It's not like everybody just thinks that's crazy talk. It's that they want to make sure that it's going to get the intended objectives. That what we expect to get out of it is clear water. Is that really what we're going to get, or are we going to end up with unintended consequences?
That was a really good summary, Lisa. Thank you. I wanted to reinforce a few things. One is that if you have more connection with the ocean, you're going to increase the salinities. And what we know about this brown tide is that it particularly it is more competitive under high saline conditions. It got a foothold in the lagoon when we had a drought and hypersaline conditions, and we're seeing it decline again now as we go into the wet season and those salinity conditions go down. So we could trade, one problem for another. We really don't know what the impacts of more ocean connection would be. The circulation enhancement, if you take a boat from one end of the Indian River Lagoon to the other, every other county has giant high-span bridges. We are the only place with these causeways that block the flow, where the lagoon is the widest across. And so we'll have the modeling. Dr. Zarillo is finishing up right now, but if you go to fish at any of those relief bridges, you know how much flow is trying to go through those little tiny bridge spans. Imagine how much more flow there would be if there were more relief bridges, if there was more open water. So we really have to work with our partners at DOT to open up that circulation. Dr. Mitch Roffer, also at Florida Tech, if you're not familiar with him, when what was the horrible oil spill in the Gulf? The BP oil spill, Horizon, sorry. They were trying to model where that oil spill was going to go. And he had been studying the patterns of circulation, trying to predict fish movement, fish migration, where the best fishing was in Mitch Roffer's fishing forecast for years. And his models were the best at predicting where that oil was going to go. And so suddenly the US government was using his model predictions to put booms and send out the forces to try to work with that. He sent an article to me this week that was a study of fish in the Indian River Lagoon near inlets versus distant from inlets. There was an 80% difference in the species abundance and the kinds of critters that live in the portions of the lagoon that are distant from inlets compared to close to inlets. So there are a lot of ecological impacts that would happen if we were to just pick a new place for an inlet. We would definitely change what that portion of the lagoon was about. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but it's something we definitely want to understand before we cut a new hole.
Is there possible to respond to that?
So if you have a question, sir, we can.
No, you got my question.
As a non-scientist, one of the things, I think these are all great comments, but one of the things this is part of why I get back to sewage, because we may not know what'll happen if we cut another inlet or open up the port or fix the bridges, whatever it is. But I think all of us know enough science to know that poop in the water is bad. I don't know that we need to study that any longer. And so that's why I'm so focused on saying, let's attack the problems that everybody knows is a problem, and everyone knows the solution is a good idea. I don't think anyone says, 22 million gallons. And by the way, just so you know, that's not uncommon. We talked about it a lot after it happened. This happens in Brevard County quite a bit. If you call my office, we can help you get on the list, so you get an email every time there's a sewage spill. Happens a lot. There's sort of a playbook. Oh, it rained unprecedented rain. Unprecedented rain on June 15th, 2018. It's never rained so much on June 15th, 2018. In the history of June 15th, 2018, there's never been this much rain. It gets in the paper one day. It'll never happen again on June 15th, 2018. We don't have to worry about it. 3 months later, it happens again. So that's why I think we as Republicans, who I think most of you here are, and as citizens, need to stay focused on the low-hanging fruit. I know the scientists will figure out bridge cutting, inlets, all that other stuff. They'll figure that out. But what we do know is we got to get the sewage out of the water.
I think that'll lead us into our next question. That seemed to be a popular question. What impact do manatees have on the Indian River with their seagrass consumption and their waste?
I'm not a scientist.
All right, I'll take that one too. So most of the manatees are actually gone now because the seagrass is gone. So they all went up to Mosquito Lagoon, and we talked to our partners up at NASA who saw them coming. They're like, oh my gosh, the entire lagoon's manatees are heading our way, and they were worried about their seagrass beds, but they were fine. So manatees, yes, they're sea cows, they eat grass. They've been here for 14,000 years doing that. So they are part of the system. So it's easy, I guess, to pick on them and say, let's get rid of the manatees and keep polluting the lagoon and killing the seagrass because the manatees might eat the last of it, and they do. We're out there trying to plant seagrass, and we're like, no, manatees, stay away from our little babies. We have to put little cages around them, or the manatees will come and eat the seagrass because they're starving to death. Is that great? Would you like to be a Brevard County resident telling your kids, we used to have manatees, but they all died, yay, because we starved them because the seagrass is gone? Is that what everybody wants? I don't understand the question of the manatees are eating all the seagrass. The seagrass is dead because it's not getting light because of all the algae blooms and all the sediment. And grass, just like the grass on our lawns, needs light. So the seagrass dies. The manatees started eating a toxic material that killed a quarter of the population in 2013. A quarter of the population died in 2013. Some of you manatee haters maybe celebrated. I don't know. But it was tragic. It was like my friend who was recovering the bodies. I had to send my crews out to help her because there were like 10 a day. These baby manatees, big manatees, they were just starving and eating the wrong things. So most of them in our part of the lagoon are gone now. So yay, I guess, to those of you who hate manatees. And the ones that are left have kind of got up to Mosquito Lagoon, and they're found some seagrass up there, and the seagrass seems to be surviving just fine. And then they've recovered, they're recovering in the springs. Sorry, I got a little emotional about that.
And one other thing is, in a balanced ecosystem, we're not going to have that issue. Besides that, the manatees, that's what they eat. And as for their poop, it's natural fertilizer. Last time I checked. So, it's a big difference in human poop going into the lagoon.
There's a lot more humans than manatees, for sure.
The manatees left 2 years ago, but don't worry. We brought in the USSSA and we only used $10 million of taxpayer money to put down AstroTurf. So I want to thank Representative Vine for passing a bill up in the Florida legislature. He touched on it a little bit, but I think it's very important. I didn't know this. I'm certainly not a scientist nor ever claim to be one, but it's not a lagoon. It's an estuary, and the way statute was written, we had legal opinions and they varied one way or another. We couldn't put money, tourism money, our number one tourism driver being lagoon related activities, we couldn't put that tourism money into the lagoon. And that one little fix is the $75 million that Representative Fine spoke of. It's very, very important, this partnership that we have between the state and the county level. And I think I touched on it, but let me give you the county's perspective here, because it seems like, you know, we're on opposite ends. So we have this freedom to do with money. I want to explain, this was not a mandate. This was just another option of what we could do with this $14.6 million that we receive from tourists. We wouldn't have to spend it on lighthouse keeper museums or magical waves. That's what they wanted to do in my area of Brevard County, create a wall that created a special wave that I guess was good for surfers. Thankfully, they did not bring that one up. Or a boat dock that you could put dragon boats in, to the very place that this poop Representative Fine was speaking about. But what this comes down to is the Brevard County Commission said, no, we don't want that freedom, and we elect to spend it on billboards that you guys probably see when you're in Atlanta, Georgia, of people fishing in Palm Bay. And you know, I don't know how big the fishing industry is in Palm Bay, but it disgusts me, because it was Representative Fine's bill that could have alleviated that. We in Brevard County hid behind saying, well, listen, I know it's weak, but you know, it's an estuary. It's not really a lagoon, and statute doesn't say it. So he changed it, and he called us out on it. And we didn't do a darn thing about it. Not one darn thing about it until election season came up. And then we said, you know what, of that $14.6 million, we are gonna dedicate, wait for this, up to $1 million. But wait, it's going to be a second tier priority. That's not me saying it, that's what the ordinance says, a second tier priority. Now the sponsor of it got a little mad when I read the actual document that was there. We had to have a special timeout. I love it that elected officials have to have timeouts, but we did. But $1 million, and listen, $1 million is great. $1 million, we talk about little bites, $1 million is very good. $15 million is about 15 times better than that $1 million. I'm not a scientist. I never claimed to be a scientist, but I have faith in these scientists up here, and I want to make sure their arsenal is as big and as diverse as possible. And it's going to take people like you getting mad every time you drive through Vieira and see millions of dollars of AstroTurf, when you see a campground that is being built in Palm Bay. Yes, about $1.7 million of a campground and a park in Palm Bay. As if one stadium is not enough in Vieira, we're going to have a $8 or $9 million publicly financed stadium in Titusville, and actually it'll be 20-some million, but 9 million will be what the Brevard County Commission dedicated to that project. So, you know, don't get mad when you drive by and see those sites, but please, next time you look and you're driving down 95 and you see one of those, come visit Melbourne Beach, and you got a surfer there, or you see a woman fishing in Palm Bay. Just remember, Randy Fine down here, Representative Randy Fine, gave the county commission the ability to use those funds to help clean our Indian River Lagoon. And my board, or the board in which I sit, said no, we couldn't even pass a resolution. I think I got a second, but I couldn't get 3 votes to support Randy Fine's fight for the Indian River Lagoon. So there's 2 questions up here. The questions are either policy questions, those would go towards Randy and myself, or science questions. And we don't pretend to be scientists. We are just strong advocates to get these scientists as much money and as much resources so we can help heal the lagoon through, you know, strong science and as well as infrastructure. Because we are concerned, as everyone else is. We're just disgusted what many of us policymakers, me included, because I was one of the 5 votes on there. I didn't, of course, vote for it. I was disgusted by it. But I sit on that board. I take responsibility. But I just want you to know the decisions that could be made if the state and the county worked together, because it's very difficult. It puts, he won't say it, so I will. It puts, probably would, it puts Randy Fine in a very difficult decision, because I've been up to Tallahassee, to say, hey, we need to bring resources down to Brevard County. Oh yeah, let's overlook the $500,000 that they're putting in a lighthouse keepers museum. This isn't a museum for the lighthouse, this is a museum for the person that worked in the lighthouse. In the budget, there is money for period correct furniture. We're gonna buy antiques with dollars that could be, and again, it's only $500,000. I've heard that so many times. $500,000 is, I'm a public school teacher. $500,000 is a lot of money to me. It's the drop in the bucket that gets us to that, starts to get us to that solution. So it's extremely important. I think Representative Fine is going to pivot off this, but the policymakers and scientists work hand in hand. But join in my disgust next time that you see, please, those billboards along 95, and you know that because of Representative Fine's bill that could otherwise go into the lagoon, now it's going to pretty pictures advertising us along the highway.
Let me just add one thing, and Commissioner Tobias sort of brought up the notion of it's just $500,000. It's just $7 million for a basketball arena in Titusville. It's just $200,000. He didn't exactly get it right. It's a kayak pier a quarter mile from where the 22 million gallons of poop went into the water, because I guess the tourist people think poop tours will be very good for tourism in Brevard. But let me give you a different example, because the argument's always made it's not enough money. It's just $500,000, or it's just $14.5 million. I was in Tallahassee when I got a letter from the county commission. And I've never told you this story before. I got a letter from the county commission. You remember, we had a lot of boats sink after Irma. The boats sank. And what's in the boats when they sink? Some things that probably aren't really good for the lagoon. Maybe, I don't think algae eat gasoline, but nonetheless, that can't be a good thing. And frankly, some of these boats might have, bathrooms in them. Boats sink. So we got a letter, I got this letter, and this gives you a sense of the problem with prioritization. I got a letter, I can find it, if any of you want to call my office, we can pull it out. But I got this letter as this $14.5 million was being spent on this ridiculously stupid stuff that said, we are broke in Brevard County. We don't have any money to spend, and if you, the state, won't give us $2.5 million to get these boats out of the lagoon, they're gonna stay there. Boy, you got you have $7 million for a basketball arena. So this is all about, that's not a $2-3 billion problem. That was a $2.5 million problem. And by the way, there weren't that many boats. I couldn't figure out why it cost $2.5 million. I said maybe I should get into the getting boats out of the river business. But nonetheless, they said $2.5 million to get all the boats out. We don't have the money. How do I go to my colleagues and say, my county is broke? They're so focused on the campgrounds and the museums for lighthouse employees, they can't afford to get the boats out of the water. You just can't do it. And that's why we as taxpayers have to demand that this stuff stop. We have to demand that this stuff stop. Because when we do it, when we show that we're responsible, then I will be able to go up there. And then I can, with a straight face, say, I need $2.5 million, or the boats will stay on the bottom. So just one example.
And what many of you don't understand, the sinking boat aspect, because there's no funding per se to pull it up, the FDEP pawned it off on the dock builders as mitigation for allowing you to put a dock with your riparian rights in your backyard, for those of you who live on the water, you had to do a public service by having your dock builder, which would come out of your pocket, to go pull some of those boats out of the water. I wrote a bunch of permits, and that's what we had to deal with for years.
Okay, panelists, thank you. The next question is, what better cooperation would the Marine Resource Council need either through citizens, government, or industry? This is towards the Marine Resource Council. What better cooperation would the Marine Resource Council need either by citizens, government, or industry?
What better cooperation?
I'm assuming it's to help further your mission.
Oh, okay, great, thank you. Well, we need everybody to be involved in saving the lagoon. So whatever you
Tell
can
us
do.
what we can do.
Well,
That's
part
what
of
we
it
wanna know, not
is-
through money, what can we
Yeah,
do
yeah.
every day? That's what we wanna know.
Thank you, that's exactly what I wanna hear.
Awesome.
So we have a footprint. So when you think about your blue footprint on the earth, you think about the watershed. So we know that the watershed is the area of land that's draining into the lagoon through the storm drain. Each one of us, and I think Scott mentioned it earlier, that we're each a little piece. Our landscape is a little piece. Our septic tank is a little piece. Our sewer line is a little piece. So when Representative Fine is talking about sewage and the overflow, that's happening because the lateral lines that go from our houses to the street are filling up with water when it rains. And that water is going into the big tanks that are at the wastewater treatment facility and filling them up. It's either going to push the pressure of that sewage, that raw sewage, back into your homes, or they have to release it somewhere. That's on us. That's us. That's not low-hanging fruit. That's every one of us spending $5,000 to $15,000 to replace the lateral line that goes from our house to the street. That's not easy. That's not easy money for me. It might, but so that's where part of what we have to accomplish as policymakers and scientists in a community is how do we subsidize that? How do we incentivize that? Where do we find the money for that? That's billions of dollars. Representative's absolutely right. For each one of us that has a house that's maybe more than 15 years old, to re-hook that line, the line that goes from our toilets in our house to the road, the sewage line, the main line that's out there on the road. The counties and cities can deal with the line at the road. They can either reline it, they've got an I&I, they've got a capital improvement plan, they have their own sewage taxes and fees that they're implementing, they've got plans for that. What's on us is that line that goes from our house to the road. And it's every one of 500,000 of those, I'm not sure what the number is, but that's the population of Brevard. There's a portion of those that we need to know which communities are the biggest impacts so we can prioritize where we can maybe subsidize those homeowners with the funds to help make that happen. So that's a big part. Understanding your line. You don't want it to happen because your driveway collapses like my good friend Dr. Robert Weaver found out this summer. His driveway collapsed, he realized that his lateral line was made out of clay. It had disconnected years ago. He had raw sewage under his driveway. Eventually it undermined his driveway collapsed, and he was just looking at a cesspool. So he knew his lateral line was in trouble. He had to rebuild his entire lateral line. You understand what I'm talking about? From the house to the road. It's our responsibility. So anything on your property, if you have a septic tank, do get it inspected. It costs like $100. I think the first time somebody brought it to Tallahassee and passed a law to require inspections, it was shot down a year later because they thought it was a financial hardship. That $100 was too much, to put on a homeowner to require that they pay $100 for an inspection. If you have a tank, it's worth the $100. Again, when it fails, it might be your daughter's wedding in the backyard. You don't want to find out because your backyard is a septic system that your septic tank has failed. Whatever you put on your lawn, if you're applying chemicals, fertilizers, you all know we've got a fertilizer ordinance not to apply it right now in the rainy season. If you're going to apply a fertilizer, use a slow release product, apply it early in the spring or late in the fall. We've got the fertilizer ordinance in effect from June 1 to September 30. Don't apply any fertilizer to your lawn right now because it rains every day. It's just going to wash down the storm drain and feed the algae. If you have a pet, I know it seems like a small amount. Pick up your pet waste. I know a lot of you do that because it's the right thing to do for your neighbors. But it's a little nutrient bomb. It's a little bacteria bomb. Ends up in the storm drain and going down into the sewer. Our storm drains do not go into any kind of treatment facility here. In other parts of the country, the storm drain and storm water is treated. Here it's pretty much goes into if there's a retention pond, and actually Brevard County has done a tremendous job with innovative stormwater solutions, but we still have hundreds of stormwater pipes that just discharge directly into the Indian River Lagoon untreated. So that's another area that we need to be investing in, upgrading our stormwater infrastructure as well as our wastewater infrastructure. And like I said, there's a part of the wastewater infrastructure that is the government's responsibility. It's the service that we pay for with our tax dollars that the government provides for us. But then there's the part that's our responsibility because it's our footprint, it's our land, it's our property, and we as property owners have that responsibility. So there's a lot of things we can do. Go to our website, savetheirl.org, and there's a lot more. We have all kinds of volunteer opportunities. If you want to get your hands wet, come out and help us plant mangroves or put oysters down. If you want to be involved in scientific research, we've got a citizen science monitoring program, collected over 500,000 data over the past 21 years. If you want to get involved in figuring out where the muck is, we do a muck finders program where we have people out on boats. In fact, we had them out this week. Actually, I think maybe it's tomorrow. Probing and finding and mapping muck so we know where muck areas are the worst. All kinds of things you can do. Participating in events like this. Super important to stay up to date, do your homework, do your research, and go to the website. There's a lot of things. Oh, one last little tidbit. So instead of using herbicide, the Roundup, it's finally been released that Roundup is a major carcinogen. It's really bad not only for the environment but for human health. Instead of using Roundup, especially like I have a gravel driveway and the weeds come up between the gravel, go out there with the teapot full of hot water and just pour it on the weeds and it kills them. It's very satisfying. So, or salt water, yeah. And it works on ants too. So try to, limit your use of pesticides and herbicides. The ants really, it's very satisfying. But, so little things like that. So go to our website. Brevard County also has a great Blue Life website with ideas of what you can do. Lots of things you can do. Thank you for that question.
I do have two very simple solutions, but I'm going to pass you first, Mr. Fine here, and then come back.
I want to talk about the lateral lines thing a little bit, because this is actually, it's a great point, it's really important. One thing that wasn't said is you need to elect better people. And I'll tell you why. How are you supposed to know that there's something wrong with your lateral line? I learned a lot about this after the 22 million gallons. So I called the Brevard County utilities folks into my office, and they walked me through it. They said, hey, there's the pipe under the street, and then there's the pipe from your toilet that goes to the pipe under the street. So I can understand this. And they said a lot of these pipes got put in 50 years ago. They might have been clay pipes and they've broken. When the water rises, it goes in, overflows the system. By the way, when the water's not rising and you flush the toilet, the pipes are still broken. Think about what's going through those cracks. But nonetheless, I said, so how do you know that your pipe needs to be replaced? And they said, well, you do a smoke test. And they told me they were really excited. They were going to do a smoke test in Satellite Beach. And I appreciate Satellite Beach having been willing to do that test. And I said, that's great. When's the last time you did the smoke test? Oh, no, it was 17 years prior. And I said, well, is that a good idea? They said, no. I said, well, why haven't you? And it was like 60,000 of them, I think, if I remember memory serves. That's the Brevard County system, not the other ones. I said, why haven't you? How much is it? It's, by the way, it was like a couple $1 million. How much is it in Satellite Beach to do the whole thing? A couple $100,000 to do the, it's a couple $1 million to test all of them. Remember, $14.5 million on basketball arenas and yeah. So a couple $1 million to test every single one. Hasn't been done in 17 years. Why? Because we'd rather build a park, or we'd rather do this, or we'd rather build a basketball arena. And then I said, okay, well good, so we could take $2 million of the $14.5 million you're literally throwing away, and you could test every pipe in the county. They said, yeah, then people would have to fix them. I said, okay, how much is that? I will tell you that the guy from, I don't know, the guy from Brevard County Sewage told me that the average repair, and I'm sure there's a range, he told me he thought, by the way, almost all of them beachside would fail. And he said the average repair would be $1,000. Now, it is your responsibility, it's your house, but a lot of people might not have the $1,000. You know, $14.5 million would pay for 14,500 people to replace those pipes. So small, what these politicians, again, the lighthouse lovers, think are small amounts of money, they're not small. Whether we're talking about, again, boats on the lagoon, or testing the pipes, or fixing the pipes. The overall solution is billions of dollars, but again, what we have to do is we gotta elect better people, so.
Okay, so your question is, what can you do? And that's usually, it's actually important. I have a couple of things that, well, yeah, some people may like the idea or not. First thing, stop watering your lawn. I know, just hang on a second. I practice exactly what I'm telling you right now. And what I did last year, and I don't water my lawn, ever. And the reason is that one, I don't like the stains. And second of all, I don't want to impact the water table. So what I did is I just went to Home Depot. I bought highly drought tolerant seeds, laid them out last year, and now this year I can't keep up with the mowing. It just takes time. I know everybody wants to have the lawn like it looks like up north. Well, we're not in the same growing zone as they are up in the northern part of the United States, so we have to work with what we have here. And besides that, those of you who have your lawns that get watered on the regular water lines, you're going to save a lot of money on your water bill by not doing it. It takes a little time. It's not going to be an instantaneous shift, but it'll work. And I've done it. I do it. Other thing too, sometimes this does drive me crazy. I hate when people wash their cars in their driveway. I know it costs a little bit of money to go to the the professional wash, but what they do is they're under FDEP regulations to capture all that wastewater. It goes down underneath, and then they have to filter it out, and then that goes for proper disposal. So when you wash your car, especially beachside, all that stuff goes right down into the lagoon. It's simple. These are little things. Those little things, yes.
Simple implementation
Right.
that we can actually do.
Yeah, and it's simple. And then here's the other thing. Fertilizers. I know everybody talks about this. Oh, I'm going back to the lawns real quick. Nobody ever tells you this because we're used to up north, and I'm from Chicago, and I understand this. We always want to keep our lawn like super manicured, super short. Well, one of the things, if you talk to any horticulturists, they're going to tell you, in Florida, you can't cut your lawn short. It actually kills the grass. If you set your lawn mowing to a higher level, high as you can, yeah, you're going to have to mow a little bit more, but it creates a healthier lawn plus less cuttings. Okay, and you can maintain it, and it's actually better for the environment that way. Now, going back to fertilizers. Okay, one of the issues is, and this is something you can do as an individual, people really don't know how to fertilize their lawn. They really don't. And I know we have ordinances about not when to fertilize. One of the things that I know came up, I could be wrong on this, but wasn't there a law that Tallahassee passed that says we cannot ban fertilizers or certain types of fertilizers? Are we allowed to ban them here? Yeah. Okay. Well, I know there might be some backlash on that, but here's the thing too, is that in lieu of banning fertilizer, one of the things that I always thought about is, why don't we just have a fertilizer class? You want to go buy fertilizer at Home Depot? Take the class. You know, and here's the funny thing, and I know this for a fact, the commercial guys who get their certificate to mow your lawn, to fertilize your lawn, it's a 6-hour online course for like $15. That's it. They get their certificate, they mail it up to Tallahassee, now they have a license to put it. So what's the big deal about maybe us, everybody doing it for free, have an online course, then you go to Home Depot. Maybe we can talk to Home Depot or Lowe's, and if you have your certificate, they give you a discount. The thing is if you know how to fertilize, and you know what to use when, you're gonna spend a lot less money than trying to guess at it. It's just a thought, and those are the small little things. And something like that would be as simple as just changing some of our ordinances in our county to require that. Make it an online class, everybody takes it, here's my little card, off I go, you renew it once a year just so you do that. And you can spread that education to everybody else. Those are the small things. They're not big deals. They're little things you can do. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
I know I probably shouldn't be checking my phone while I'm up here, but I encourage you guys to check your phone right now. The Florida Today just reported that 10 million, or that $14.6 million that we were talking about could be going to the lagoon. These people, and thankfully that has to come to the board for a decision. It doesn't matter. There's not 3 votes to say no, that money needs to go to the lagoon. But I just want to give you the heads up, because I'm learning about this right now, 41 minutes ago by Dave Berman. This tourist money has dedicated $10 million to an aquarium that will be at the port. But it gets better.
Just fill it with lagoon water.
You can't make this stuff up, folks. It gets better, and Randy doesn't know this. He will be contributing. Well, if we're given $10 million, it says right here, they expect a $10 million match for an aquarium, and we may need it. If this lagoon continues to go the way it does, and you want to see fish, maybe we need to they're expecting a total of $70 million, so there will be some private, I guess, money in there, but again, 10 million from us and 10 million from Randy, and I hate when we look at it that way. That's so disgusting to me, because it comes out of your back pockets, whether it's filtered through the county or whether it's filtered through the state or the federal government. It's money that is coming directly out of your pocket. So again, $10 million of this $14 million a year that we keep on talking about just popped up for an aquarium. It looks really pretty. The pictures are very, very nice. But anyway, that when we talk about electing better people, I think you may see different results. Yeah, it was a free revenue. I'm sorry.
I want to go back to the question of what can you do, and I heard a lot of great answers, so I won't repeat those except to say that in the back of the room, the board back there, and Anthony, wave your hand, we have handouts on the explanation of the lateral line, so if you need to know how to maintain your septic or your sewer, there's handouts back there, how to use fertilizer, irrigation, there's information back there. And then what I wanted to add that wasn't covered is, depending on where you are in Brevard's portion of the Indian River Lagoon, somewhere between 20 and 30% of the pollution that lands there is falling out of the sky from air pollution. And so some of the things that weren't mentioned here are all the things that we do that contribute to air pollution. So the cars that we buy, that we choose to drive, can either be fairly clean on emissions or not. And so when you're picking out your car, one of the things on the sticker is all about emissions. So that's an important thing to look at when you're making that decision. When you're replacing your appliances, the more energy efficient appliances are going to use less fuel. That's going to mean there's less power plant emissions going into the sky. So car emissions, solar, electric, anything that we can do to try to keep our air cleaner is going to help the lagoon. And we were on a good trajectory. We had seen from the CAFE standards adopted years ago with goals for cleaner air by 2020. We had been seeing our air get cleaner and the amount of pollution falling onto the lagoon going down. I don't know, as those rules are repealed, how that's going to change. So it's going to take individual decision making here to keep cleaning up our air and improving on that instead of letting that reverse directions.
Panelists, that was our last question. We're running short on time, but we'd like to do closing remarks. Whoever would like to start.
I'm not ready.
Okay. I think the best soundbite was you gotta elect better people. And listen, I need to be held to that standard as well. And to do that, you need to do things like what you're doing today. You need to get involved, hear what folks have to say, and this is going to come. I don't want to talk about how powerful I am, but I just learned about this aquarium idea right now. The paper had it first. There's a reason why I hear about these crazy ideas last, because I'm the only guy up there who thinks they're crazy. So you can help me if you agree that this money should be spent helping the lagoon by calling up your representative, calling up your county commissioner, and saying, I know there's a vote coming up, and I just want to get in my 2 cents. I think that those lines that run from my toilet to the sewer lines are more important than millions of dollars of AstroTurf. And I want you, or I'd appreciate it if you'd vote and take another step. I'll tell you what convinces 5 of us at the county commission. Now, this doesn't work because Tallahassee's a long way away and many of them are seasoned politicians, but not so much at the county commission. We are convinced by more than 6 people that show up in the same color shirt. I know it's disgusting, but it's 100% true. If you can get 6 people in a blue, a green, an orange, or a yellow shirt and all sit together and stay with the same message, you know, with an aquarium and a big line through it, I'll even pay for the shirt. If we're on the same side, you heard it here first, whether there's 6 or there's 60, you can get them made up for $10, and trust me, I would pay $600 to stop this aquarium so we can put that money in the lagoon, because you have a great deal of power. You have a great deal of power when it comes to elected officials. We are all, maybe not in Tallahassee because they have tons, they run races of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you get 1 or 2 nasty emails saying you're doing the wrong thing. It's not a big deal. They only meet a couple months a year, and they meet in rooms like this, and there'll be 5 people in the audience. But at a county commission meeting, when there are more than 10 people that get up there and say the exact same message, I have sat on the dais and seen people change their mind multiple times, because principles are important and we lack them. We do, and you laugh, but it's terrible, but it gives you guys a great deal of power, and you should do it on both sides. You should absolutely do it on both sides, whether you agree with me or whether you disagree. But that's a little bit of a tidbit. Please, we meet, you know, twice a month, in the morning once, and then the evening once. You're welcome to call my office. Get involved on the citizens oversight. They do a wonderful job as far as oversight. I have heard so many darn complaints of stuff that comes out of there, but I've never heard one person say, I can tell you a fault of Virginia over here. She meets with everyone. She speaks with every single person. This is the director of the entire department. Tens of millions of dollars flow through her department, and she meets, no matter what side. I've heard people say, I absolutely disagree, but she's a wonderful lady. and that's what I think staff has done such a very good job. It gives you guys the opportunity to craft policy. And I wouldn't say this if I didn't believe it. Please stay engaged. Call my office. You're welcome to call my office. Call Randy's office. Hell, you don't even have to call. Just watch his Facebook. He does more on Facebook than anyone else of when the meetings are. And I would be more than willing, especially if we're on the same side here, to help craft a message. Because listen, it's a lot easier to be the only crazy guy up there when I have 50 crazy people in the audience that are saying things of, yes, that aquarium sounds like a good idea, and let's look at that as soon as we heal our lagoon, because that's very difficult for my 4 counterparts or 3 counterparts or whatever to say, you know what, no, that aquarium or that oars and paddles or that, no matter whether it's in your district or not. And I'll tell you what, we went over the Titusville Stadium, the Vieira AstroTurf, the campground in Palm Bay, the oars and paddles of the Lighthouse Keepers Museum. I'll give you a hint what they have in common. Not one of them is located in the district I represent, because I have said over and over and over again, the lagoon is far more important than any project that you guys would seem to propose in the district. So please stay engaged, buy matching t-shirts, and we'd love to have you at any of our meetings.
Thank you, and I absolutely agree with you on the fact that, you know, the power is at the local level, that we do have, the people have the power at the local level. It's where democracy happens, and it's a beautiful thing. So do get to know your county commissioners, your city council people, and do participate in that process. But you know, if you are politically motivated, you need to be participating at the local level, because that's where the most meaningful, a lot of the most meaningful for your lives, questions are being answered and decisions are being made. And then I guess on my closing, it's you know, we, the people, are living in a community with a river running through it. It is an estuary, it is a lagoon because there's a bar that separates it from the ocean, making it a lagoon. But it's something that we all cherish and love for different reasons, but we all share a common goal of wanting it to come back and be healthy and be vital and be prosperous, and we want people to want to come and visit it and enjoy it. We want to be able to eat the fish out of it. And the problems that the lagoon is experiencing now are problems that we caused. We, the people, caused this lagoon to be in despair, and it's gonna take us to fix it. And it's gonna take a long time. It took 50, 60, 70 years for it to get this bad. We've got a thing called legacy load of pollutants in the bottom that are gonna take years to remove. And then there's also lag time, which Scott mentioned that, you know, when something dies and it falls to the bottom, it releases those nutrients for a long time. That's like a lag time where nutrients are gonna continue to be released. It's gonna take a long time before we're gonna see a response. You can't expect to pass a sales tax, implement 5 projects, and immediately the lagoon's water is gonna get clear. I got calls this winter when it stopped raining and areas of the lagoon cleared up and the water was all clear. People are like, we did it, it's fixed. I'm like, no, it's just dry season. So it is gonna take a long time, and it's gonna take us being patient and vigilant and continuing to speak to our local representatives about pushing the needle forward. We need to invest in innovation. One of the other great things that has happened with all the attention and the money that's come into Lagoon is brilliance. We've got brilliant people. We the people can be incredibly intelligent. We can solve this. If we can put communities on Mars, we can figure out how to deal with our wastewater in Brevard County. We can clean the algae out of the Indian River Lagoon. I have complete faith in that. That's what brings me to work every day. And I get calls all the time. I send them to Dwayne DeFries at the National Estuary Program. I'm like, talk to Dwayne. Dwayne's got a list of genius ideas that he's going to be milling through and figuring out, you know, who to invest in, you know, which types of, you know, sonics or chemicals, or what are we going to use to try to reduce algae in the lagoon? How are we going to respond to dropping oxygen levels in the water column to reduce the chances of fish kills? We the people are genius enough that we can deal with this. It's just going to take some time and initiative, and now we have the resources to get it done. So that's the exciting part. Unfortunately, you know, I mentioned we the people, you know, caused this. So, you know, how do we proceed in a state of Florida whose economy has it's precariously balanced on growth? You know, most of Florida's economy is really based on building more houses, bringing more people in. You know, it's an economy built on growth. And we've suffered from that. We're suffering from that everywhere. We can't just put a wall up at Florida and say, no more people can come in here. We can't do that. But we need to be smarter about how we grow, and that's what we also need to be talking to, not only our local leaders, but our state leaders. You know, we need to get our comprehensive plans back. We need to get our statewide oversight of comprehensive planning back in place. The Department of Community Affairs that was disabled a couple of years ago. You know, being smart about how do we grow regionally, and we start communicating between jurisdictions, between counties about growing, and how do we keep our stormwater on site, and how do we deal with growth in a smart way. There's a way to do it smart. We know how to do it smart. We can do it smart. We the people, we're very smart. We're capable of doing this. So, you know, I guess bottom line is it's gonna take a long time. I have complete faith we can get this done. I hope we get it done before I retire. And it's going to take all of us to do it. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Okay, just a few quick closing remarks. As we all know, the lagoon is actually one of the most diverse systems, which we are watching it collapse before us. So we absolutely have to work together as a community. There's no doubt about that. And I know it's talked about here about using your voice and going to your politicians and talking to them about, I got something better. Run against them. Nothing better than a politician knowing they might lose their job when they start hustling at that point. So, you know, because, yeah, not you, of course, not you. But run against them, why not? I mean, you know what? Might as well do it. Shake it up a little bit. That will make a huge difference, you know, because they're all talking about it now, but then come after elections, they get real quiet. So,
We've got the same losers coming back to run again.
Right. We need to get new, fresh blood. We've got everybody sitting here. You all care. You're a big group of people. Stand up and run. Do it. That's gonna change a lot of things. Like you said, you keep having the same people rerun again and again. When's that gonna stop? We need fresh blood, and I agree with you on that. And most importantly, I wanna leave you with this: just do your little part. All the time. Little bits here and there make the biggest difference. Thank you.
So two things. But first, I want to disagree vehemently with something you said. You said we live in a community and a river runs through it. I just want to be clear. I had to run an entire bill because the Brevard County Commission said that the Indian River is not a river. It is not a river. It is an estuary or a lagoon. It required a piece of legislation to clear that up. So, joking aside, it is not a river. Do never call it one. We did not say you could clean up like creeks and ponds and streams, so I'm going to wait for them to say we can't do that, and I'll have to run another bill. Anyway, look, I'd like to close on this. This is a political meeting, it's the Young Republicans. And so I want to talk very briefly about the battle that we have in the election that's coming up. Actually, it's happened in both parties. It's a battle between not conservatives and moderates, or liberals and moderates if you're a Democrat. It is a battle between two groups. And they're transactionalists and ideologues. The transactionalists are the folks who take money from one group, and then they hand out money for AstroTurf. They see the government as a means to enrich themselves, or they enrich their friends. See, that was stupid. When I got into this, I actually assumed everyone did this because they wanted to do good for other people. That's why I did it. And it turns out there's a whole group of transactionalists who are trying to hook up their friends, or hook up themselves. And then there's the ideologues who are doing it because they believe. Interestingly, where do you think it's easier to raise money if you're a candidate? If you're a transactionalist or if you're an ideologue? Now on the Democratic side, this sort of Bernie Sanders group, they were the ideologues. The Hillary Clinton folks, they were sort of the transactionalists. And that, if you look at our local Democratic Party, the ideologues beat the transactionalists. They run the show. Well, we have to decide in our own party, in the Republican Party, are we going to be a party of transactionalists, or are we going to be a party of ideologues, of people who do what we believe? So anyway, that's what I would say. I encourage you to be an ideologue. Don't be a transactionalist, and don't vote for them either.
It's hard, all of that. In speaking to lots of groups like this and lots of people over the last couple years since this issue came up, I continue to be fascinated by people's individual stories, their connection with the Indian River Lagoon. There are so many different ways that people experience the lagoon, that love the lagoon, interact with the lagoon. And what concerns me is that the lagoon is in such bad health now. There are people who are selling their boats because it's not worth fishing anymore. And there are people who are selling their property because it's just not joyful like it used to be. And so as people move away from those experiences, they're not going to be telling those fish stories. And there are going to be new people moving here that have never experienced those things. It's called a shifting baseline. So it's really important that those of you who have lived here, who have experienced what the lagoon once was and what it can be again, that you keep those stories alive, and then you do what everybody here has said, which is, keep informed and stay active, and get engaged, and elect the right people, because we've got to stay the course, and it's up to us to make it happen, because other people won't have those memories, and they will have other priorities. So thank you very much for spending your evening with us this evening. Thanks for this opportunity for this panel.
Panelists, thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Please feel free to ask any of our panelists any questions after they leave. Thank you for coming tonight, and we'd like to thank the Crown Plaza for hosting us tonight at their beautiful hotel. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Have a good evening.